So here's a question. What does it take to make a film successful? Well, it's actually pretty simple, and this video was inspired by a comment in a recent review that I did for the film Wonka, which I thought most people would agree that there are certain standards that we could, factor into what makes a film successful, at least in the studio's eyes, or in the audience's eyes, or in the theater's eyes. Well, I guess it wasn't as plainly clear as I seem to have thought it would be to pretty much everybody. All right, here we go. Now, I came to a realization, and of course this is a reasonable assumption on my part, is that the person just didn't watch the whole video. They didn't understand that I was basically calling Wonka an average movie, which it is, and still in theaters. If you want to go see it again, go for it. I don't think it's inspiring a lot of repeat viewing, but if it did, that would certainly help it get to what would be a reasonable measure of success, which would be profitability. Now, it's only, it's under $100 million short of that at the moment, and it's likely to make up that $84 million that they need to do, the advertising budget, and of course the split that they have to give to the theaters. So if it can do all of those things and accomplish that with another $84 million in the box office, then yes, Wonka will be a profitable film. Let's hope that it does it. I'm never rooting for these films to fail unless they're, abominations to humanity or just absolutely terrible. I want things to be successful. I like to enjoy movies, which is the whole reason I go and review them. I also like to save viewers like you from seeing something, accidentally, or maybe I just want you to save your money, because oftentimes a lot of these films will end up on a streaming service, and if you are just looking to waste time, they'll be there for you. Now, I didn't say Wonka was a bad movie. I'm still not saying Wonka's a bad movie. I'm not even saying that, a lot of the films I review that I don't give particularly high scores to are bad films. If they are bad, I'll tell you, which is the whole point of a film critique to begin with. Now, we're going to move on from that, and I'm going to say there are some reasonable ways that we know a film has been successful. So let's talk about those. If you're a studio, of course, the obvious metric to a successful film is going to be money. The film made money, because that's why you make a film. You don't just make a film because it's somebody's dream. I mean, you might have to make a film because it's somebody's dream, because it's part of a package deal in order to get that person to sign a contract, but even those deals are now few and far between. There aren't a whole lot of movie stars left in Hollywood that could literally drive the box office anymore. They just don't exist, and when they do exist, the studios do their level best not to necessarily give them long-term deals or even sign them to what would be successful projects, which is why you see a lot of the people we know would bring butts to the seats not making films anymore, like, Robert Downey Jr. and a few others out there that certainly would guarantee the success of, let's say, a Marvel movie. Now, one of the reasons that you can assume, reasonably expect actually, that studios want to make money is right now they are in the worst possible position they've been in a very long time. They have a huge cash and debt problem, and the studios themselves are in debt up to their eyeballs. Just look at what's going on with Warner Brothers and Paramount. You also have Disney, who is now turning debt into an art form, and not in a good way, and I still don't understand why the stock price is going up despite the fact that everything around them is going down. And, for obvious reasons, and we can certainly talk about that later. But again, money is important. The studios need it because, they don't have very much anymore. One of the reasons they don't have very much anymore is, of course, because of all the flops. And you can say, how can you say that? If you didn't see a film and it didn't make any money, how can you say it's a flop? It's a flop because it didn't make any money. Understand, you can make a perfectly good film. It could be beautiful. There could be a small group of people who love that film. It's their favorite film ever made. But if an audience in the broadest sense isn't interested or doesn't patronize the film, then guess what? It's not a success. It's a flop. That's, the definition of flop. And so, as I mentioned, Hollywood has had a successive string of flops, which isn't good. It's very bad. It's bad for somebody like me who, I like to go see movies. I like to enjoy movies. I used to enjoy movies. Almost every movie I could go and see, for the most part, unless I knew it was going to be bad, then I just wouldn't go see it. I mean, that's what discerning audiences do. And now, that's actually what's happening at theaters. Audiences have been subjected to so much proselytizing and, other things in the form of cinema that they just aren't interested anymore. They don't go to see films because they kind of already know the tone and, well, basically the building blocks of a modern film in cinema. Because if it has anything that's adjacent to or even referencing the message, people are bailing out. That's not my fault. I didn't do that. I didn't make the movie. Yes, there's a bunch of people that work on movies, and that's great. They got a job. They were paid for that job already. And so if they are participating in making a bad product, you don't blame them, you just blame the product that was being created, which is the story. So really it's in the studio's hands, the writer's hands, the director's hands, and the actor's hands as far as that product goes. But all of the crew members and everybody that's involved in that production got paid, okay? And no, they didn't set out to make a bad thing. I mean, you can be part of a bad thing all the time. You could have worked at Enron, not knowing exactly all the shadiness that was going on there, and well, guess what? You still worked on a bad product or for a bad company. You didn't know that. You found it out later, not your fault. That's the same thing with a bad film. So stop using that excuse, because it just doesn't work. Films either make money or they don't make money. You make a good movie or you make a bad movie. You know what? When you make a good movie, you usually make money, and then everybody's happy, including the cast and crew, although they're not any happier because they're not really getting any more money. Get it? If you actually disagree with my point, and obviously any business in the world's point of existence is to make money, then I would suggest you go back to bed and take a nap, because you're very tired. You should go get a candy bar or something. Well, maybe not if you have a sugar sensitivity, but get something to put some blood sugar into your body so maybe you start thinking rationally again. 2023 was purely the year of purely putrid tales. That's all Hollywood could conjure up. And I feel like we got a lot of leftovers this year. There were 3 or 4 incredibly successful films. One that I completely missed the mark on because I thought people would be, well, nicer to men in general, but hey, can't get them all right. They've been pretty good track record this year, but Barbie was pretty successful. I'd say it was the most successful film of the year. However, I told you, Super Mario Brothers would be a fantastic film, and guess what? It was. It made a ton of money. I think that was an easy call. We had a few others this year that were also bigger films, but really outside of a couple more films in the sphere of 2023, you really didn't have a lot of successes. Avatar, which was something Disney really didn't have any control of, was really something that they basically were just a distributor for. That film was actually successful. Now, if you want to tie that to Disney and say, yay, Disney, well, congratulations. It's really the only film that they released this year that actually made some real money. It's actually debatable, now that we are getting all the finalized numbers over the course of the next 6 to 8 months for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, it's really arguable that maybe that made a profit, but we won't really know, and that's a big problem. We've seen some articles recently, including from people that I respect that I think should know better, like Rebecca Rubin over at one of the trade magazines. I think she should have known better that these films that she said or tried to portray as successful were not financially. And again, that's the thing that matters. That's your scorecard. Did it make money at the box office? And how do you know how to calculate that? It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And we're finding out that even my method, which is taking the production budget and multiplying it by 2.8 as the break-even point, even that could be wrong now. It could be over 3 times the production budget now to make a film successful, especially a Disney film, anything coming out of Disney's brands. I'm sorry, just happens to be the truth. Look at the production budget and, of course, all the ancillaries that were added later through the company's house numbers that really show that Indiana Jones is going to be one of the most expensive flops ever made. But again, 2023, year of the flops, year of the, the ops, maybe. And of course, always consider that, if you insert the message, you're getting rid of the story. And I think that's a lot of the problem. And it has been since about 2013. You've seen as that ick creeped in, that ick actually created a situation where you, lost the story because you only have room for a thing. You don't have room for the story and a thing. Usually it takes a really good writer at this point, and I'm sorry to say we don't have any good writers anymore. You guys got rid of them all. Well done. I guess the point is the audience didn't show up at all, and you can't blame them. There wasn't anything out there that was good to see, and the things that were good to see, well, they went to see. And a lot of people are now waiting, not for critics, not for Rotten Tomatoes, not for Metacritic, not for any of these other aggregators. No. They're waiting for people like, me, and obviously Neurotic, and WDW Pro, and Midnight's Edge, and, that Park Place, and there's a lot of us. Comics Division, so many other minds out there. Nick will do that occasionally. There's just a whole list of people that they'll rather listen to to find out if something's going to be good, if it's worth their time, because guess what? Money is harder to come by. Things are way more expensive, and the first thing to go in an audience's budget, well, is entertainment. So, well, you're gonna have to make better things now, aren't you? Oh, and by the way, because you're competing for entertainment dollars now, which are going to be more scarce, you have to make good things in order to make the scorecard reflect that you made something good. And let me reflect back on Indiana Jones 5, whatever that film was, the diaper of diarrhea or whatever that happened to be. There was a better story there, we just didn't get it. We got a regurgitated garbage message story from the mind of KK. And we got a lot of lies coming out of the studio when people like myself and Nerdrotic and Comics Division and all of us, Midnight's Edge, were telling you that this film was going to be bad and here's all the reasons, and we started to lay out the leaks, which were, well, unfortunately accurate. And the people that were producing that film told you we were liars. Well, everything that we said was true, up to the point where we even said that they had to reshoot the ending. And that wasn't a step in the wrong direction, because guess what? The composer for the film, the legendary John Williams, went out there and told people that he had to do a little bit more because they had to go back and fix the ending. So then you get the garbageness of the director coming out there and calling everybody liars. Well, guess what? He was the liar. And they had to go back and fix the ending, which they didn't fix, which is even worse. The entire plot of the film originally, before they got to reshooting different parts of it, was very misandrous. It's kind of the new Hollywood trope. Misandry everywhere you go. It's even reflected in the most recent Netflix film, Rebel Moon, but we're not going to talk about that because really, not enough people care. They still somehow managed in Indy 5 to make KK's insert, Phoebe Wall or Bridge. I think she would know what she was at this point. But anyway, you would think that you would have been able to tone that down at the end, and that KK's self-insert wouldn't have been the heroine that saved everything. But no, that's exactly what happened. And that's really annoying. And it's not just, again, because it's misandrous and it's man-hating, and obviously it's not going to appeal to somebody like me, but it doesn't appeal to a broad audience because nothing was ever earned. There was no reason for her to be a hero. She was living off of the better men, which is happening all the time now in film everywhere. Even if it's, again, not necessarily a misandrous film. If it's laden with the message and it's a remake of any kind or a sequel or anything of the sort, it's taking from somebody better and making it much, much worse. At the end of the day, Indy 5 and all the other films that we talked about during this year before they came out, and we predicted mostly accurately that the films would have a rough time at the box office, all that came to pass. And people are like, well, how did you guys know? I don't know. I've been paying attention. I've been watching. I've been listening. I've been paying attention to leaks, listening to sources, talking to other people in the know. And ultimately, when you start to reinforce that through different sources and locations, you compile a picture of what is actually happening. Sometimes you even get, I don't know, script leaks or some coverage or something like that that you can reflect on and start to understand what each of these projects is going to be from its very inception. Well, it's pretty easy to predict flops that way. And I guess it is possible, and I'm going to give a little bit of deference to some of the thoughts that some of you people may have out there, although I think most of you are smart enough to realize that the box office is a scorecard. But you could have a good film that's not successful. It doesn't happen very often. And usually you know when something's good because it makes money in the box office. The only film I could think of that I would disagree with what the box office gave us versus the quality of the film would be the latest Mission Impossible film. But again, I was wrong. That film just financially wasn't as successful as it needed to be considered a success. It could actually be considered a flop. I'm willing to give on that, and that's okay. At the end of the day, and this is the reality of it all, if you're a studio and you are not using the box office and the audience as a benchmark, then you're not going to be a studio for very much longer. And I think Disney's going to be the only company that comes around to this realization, and maybe a little bit too late. They may have to cough up some of their very valuable IP or try to go about a different way of making content, because nothing that they released this year was particularly successful. In fact, I would say there's a decent chance that nothing they released this year was successful except for a film they distributed, Avatar: The Way of Water. What's funny is that Disney may actually be coming to grips with this whole idea that they need to make films that appeal to a broad audience, and that was reflected in many different financial statements, including a recent SEC filing that we've talked about before here on the channel and elsewhere. And I think that in, well, the boardrooms across the United States, in a lot of now litigation and other places, I think they may be starting to get the message that we need to start appealing back to our base. The problem is, I don't know how much of their base is left anymore. And I don't know how many of them got so badly burned that they would return to a company who has basically been tearing them down for the better part of 6 years, if not longer than that. So suffice it to say that if you're in business and you're not making a profit, you're not going to be in business very long. Most small businesses, once they start, they need about 2 or 3 years before they have a benchmark of whether or not they're going to make it. And most small businesses fail inside of the first 2 years, sometimes much sooner, oftentimes within 6 to 18 months. So again, you need profit, which means in the case of the movie business, you need box office numbers. And if those numbers aren't good enough to overcome everything that goes before, well, you may not be making movies much longer. I hope this video was able to at least delineate a good film from a bad film. I hope that you have a grasp of what makes a film successful. And I also hope that we can finally put to bed the idea that you can make a successful film without making a profit. I think I made that pretty clear. And since we've come to the end of the video, I have to ask you at least one question, which is, do you get it? Do you agree? Do you think that maybe you have to make a profitable film for it to be successful? I think that's a pretty simple question. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below, and I will get back to you because I have a feeling I'm going to get a lot of responses on this one. And after all of that, as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya!